All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today on our webinar to talk about how the Dragos platform as asset inventory tools fuel detection and response in ICS environments. Today, I'm joined by Dylan Lee, a principal technical account manager here, and Greg Pullman, a principal industrial threat hunter and a member of our OT Watch threat hunting team here at Dragos. And I'm really excited to have these two presenters here today because Greg and Dylan truly are in the trenches every day with our customers to ensure that organizations in OT cybersecurity programs are built with that strong foundation. They are operationalized successfully in OT environments and bring that proactive approach with OT Watch threat hunting with the goal of always being ahead of adversaries to reach the market. So we have a lot to cover today. I'm just going to quickly do some housekeeping here. Your microphones are muted, but we'd still love for this session to be interactive. So please use that Q&A chat feature that you see there. And we'll try and answer as many as we can at the end, and any that we're not able to get to, we will follow up with you directly. The session is being recorded and we will send it out in 1 to 2 business days. So let's walk through what we're going to talk about briefly today. The main theme of our conversation is to highlight the importance of an operational asset inventory to give organizations the visibility that you need, that key step that helps you move towards the other important areas of an ICS OT cybersecurity program, the ability to build a practical and prioritized vulnerability management program with that key point on practical, because in OT environments, it's just not the same as an IT environment when dealing with vulnerabilities. And we're going to walk through a live demonstration on how we help our organizations with that, utilizing the Dragos platform. And then we will walk through a case study of how we take Dragos's in-house intelligence research and build it into defense analytics. And we're going to be focusing on the latest Frosty Goop ICS malware. We will then hand it over to Greg, and we're going to talk about the power of proactive threat hunting, going through 2 use cases, one vulnerability and one emerging threat scenario, and how threat hunting works here at Dragos for our customer base. And then we'll end with some live Q&A. So what we know, today's industrial systems are complicated, right? So OT technologies are built at massive scale, including OT, IT, cyber physical systems. Let's add a bunch more acronyms in there, and we might get close to what all of you are dealing with every day, with hundreds of specialized protocols and different requirements. And as these environments modernize and organizations go through this digital transformation, having more remote environments, increased third-party access, the complications that you all deal with every day with the zero tolerance for downtime is important as you're building out your ICS program, to acknowledge and selecting technologies that help you with these specific requirements. And as these environments are changing and automating and connecting more, threats are certainly taking notice to this. And as you're rolling out your ICS OT cybersecurity program, there are more unknown assets, connections, and vulnerabilities, and therefore unmanaged risks. You're dealing with blind spots in your operations, with maybe the inability to identify, troubleshoot certain issues that can lead to outages. And all the while, the threat groups are taking notice. And recently, we just released our most current quarterly update on ransomware and OT environments, which has grown 50% since the last quarter in the targeting of these industrial systems. So it's a problem organizations need to tackle. It requires an OT-focused approach. Using solutions that maybe worked in IT environments won't necessarily work in tackling some of these challenges in OT environments. And it starts with that foundational aspect of building an asset inventory, and that's challenging, right? Our most current survey of Dragos services customers that are coming to Dragos to get going with their ICS program or operationalize or their program report 61% lack that visibility that they require in OT environments. And we are committed to helping our customers reduce this percentage and gain the visibility required so that they can move forth to build an asset inventory. And it all starts with getting the data, sourcing the data to get an accurate asset inventory. without impacting the availability of systems. And that's why here at Dragos, we lead with a do no harm approach being the vital requirement when building and working in OT environments. The second is the lack of standardization. These environments are specialized. They have inconsistencies in asset attribution across different vendors, asset types, inputs, which makes categorizing these assets very challenging. So even if you gain the information, after getting the data, it might be lacking the OT context to make risk-informed decisions, like deep understanding of the specific threats targeting these environments, not only what vulnerabilities exist, but how they might be exploited, and how to actually respond in situations where patching is not possible. So the goal is to gain that context and standardization and to answer the key questions. Questions like, how many assets are we monitoring? What are our crown jewels and therefore need to have added protection? How are the assets critical to my operations? Which assets are being exposed to what vulnerabilities, et cetera? So that's what we are going to talk about in our demonstration here in a bit. But for those that don't, that are maybe not familiar with Dragos, so this is your first time joining, we're going to talk a lot about some of our different capabilities here today. So I just want to very, very quickly talk about the Dragos ecosystem. So Dragos has the largest ICS cyber threat intelligence team, constantly out researching the latest threats and vulnerabilities, adding the OT context, building the threat research required to then build platform analytics and push into our Dragos technology platform. And we have our OT cybersecurity services that help folks from start to finish the plan, build, run their ICS program, all pushed into the Dragos platform. Today, we're going to focus on that asset discovery and inventory on the bottom there, and how it fuels the risk-based vulnerability management, threat detection and response. And we will discuss our neighborhood keeper capability, which is our collective intelligence network, and how it gives us the data that we need to build the best and most current information to our customer base. So to set Dylan up really quickly here, it all starts with collecting the data, which we discussed, and the primary way that Dragos does that is through our network sensors, the Dragos sensor that is deployed in the environment. This is our primary method for passive data collection, but we acknowledge as things change in the environments and these environments continue to evolve, we are now expanding our data collection capabilities with our new edge collector and our file ingest capability that Dylan's going to walk through here in a second, all with the goal of analyzing that north, south, east, west traffic in these environments with a passive first approach. So once you're able to collect that data, the monitoring can begin. The asset inventory and profiling is possible. We are able to then build the vulnerability management program, and Dragos does these in very unique ways to help organizations operationalize the now, next, never prioritization of the vulnerabilities to make sure that you're handling the most important and emergent things first. Our high fidelity threat detections and playbooks that are ICS specialized, written by ICS experts to help you in your response efforts. And of course, this platform needs to be a part of the greater enterprise cybersecurity program. And we do have strong integrations with IT security tools to make that happen. So with that, Dylan, I'm going to hand it over to you to give us our first demo of the session.
Thank you, Mary. Let's take a look at the Dragos platform. In the Dragos platform, asset inventory is one of the key features of the product. With our passive sensors, we are collecting information off the wire from all the vendors in your environment. We have dissectors for Schneider Electric, Rockwell, Siemens, and we're able to take that information, dissect it out, and build an asset profile of your environment. And one of the reasons we do this is so you're able to answer questions that may come down from leadership, or answer questions around vulnerability management of what is in your environment. Does this new piece of information impact you in any way? For example, if you have someone on your team ask, are we affected by a Rockwell CVE that has come out? You're able to quickly say, hey, we have compact logics. No, this CVE does not affect us. Or go around and pick other vendors and different systems in your environment. And if you're constantly being asked around certain queries or certain questions, now in the Dragos platform, we can build pre-built widgets that you can filter on every time you come in here. For example, one of the top ones is crown jewel analysis. So this is taking the asset inventory and looking for things that you have noted as critical assets to your environment. So with these critical assets, you're able to quickly pivot to them, quickly look at them and see if there's any notifications, any vulnerabilities, and quickly kind of deduce what is going on in your environment. You can also take the same list and pivot into an interactive map that will show you everything in your environment. Inside the interactive map, we have what we call zones. This is a simple designation of where assets live, and we can see comms of these devices over a set time frame. So not only can you say, hey, am I vulnerable to something, you can also see where and when your devices are talking. And we have overlays to help you identify those vulnerable assets in your environment. So if you're building mitigations in front of these assets, for example, Schneider Electric, you know you're protected by these in-place mitigations. So, and again, you can see where are these assets talking and different systems inside of your ICS systems. And then also you can simply pivot back to an asset. In this case, we have a compact logics from Allen Bradley. And then you can see the vulnerabilities again and dive into all the information behind those vulnerabilities. For example, this vulnerability, Dragos has given you custom guidance in accordance with the release on how to help mitigate or patch the affected device. We provide both resources from Rockwell and from CISA, and along with all the assets that are impacted by this vulnerability. And once you're able to go through and determine you are no longer affected, either through mitigation or through patching of that device, you're able to go through, close out the vulnerability, and say, hey, I mitigated this device by firewall rules, save it, and now it's closed, and we have a historical record of this vulnerability, this device, and you're able to go from enriched asset information to closing out vulnerabilities. However, sometimes assets in an environment aren't able to pick up information off the wire. They may be talking communications that we may not have dissectors for. We may have only seen higher in the network information, and these devices sit lower in the network. So in the newest version, we have a data import tool. This data import tool will have parsers from Ovation, Delta V, the Dragos CSV, or just custom JSON, XML, and CSV. For this example, I'm going to go through and put in a Dragos CSV. We'll call this Siemens, and we will enrich those Siemens assets that we were missing information from. As you can see, we now have more information about the Siemens devices. They are getting updated. Some are controllers, some look like Scalent switches. And then we can go through and import. And now we can quickly see our new enriched Siemens assets and their information, which now gives us enough information to decide if I need to give this asset a higher criticality. And if the answer is yes, we can quickly select these three devices, change the criticality to a 10, so they are now crown jewels. And our crown jewels increases. And it includes the original Modicons and our new high critical Siemens controllers. So that is asset inventory and vulnerabilities and a quick one-step process of why it's important and what you can do with that information. And back to you, Mary.
All right. Thank you, Dylan, so much for that great setup. So for the remainder of the discussion, we're going to build on that foundational role of asset inventory, gaining that visibility into your environment, and talk about how we operationalize intelligence. And this is where Dragos really excels and differentiates in the industry. So in this section, we're not only going to explore how we operationalize threat intelligence with the Dragos platform, but also how we support these emerging vulnerabilities and support customers with the human element to respond within the constraints of an OT environment that comes with some complications that we consider when building out and operationalizing our threat intelligence. So we do get the question a lot of how do we transform OT CTI into detections and get that information into the Dragos platform? What is the speed that those detections come in, and how do we keep our customers as up to date as possible with the content that we develop here? And it all starts with a deep understanding of the threats. And that's where our OT CTI team comes in, and our worldview reporting documents and does this great research that we then take into and make it operational within the Dragos platform. So it starts there with that understanding of the threat, right? They begin with thorough analysis, focusing on how the threat operates and interacts with systems. We utilize our internal first-party data. We gather data from across the Dragos fleet via our neighborhood keeper capability, which anonymizes threat information across all of our opted-in users so that we can make some correlations of what's going on in the industry. And this is all done through our adversarial threat hunters that we have within our threat intelligence team. They then take that and start building the analytics. So this allows us to build analytics detections, factoring in complexity, telemetry, et cetera, from all of these data points before codifying into the Dragos platform. Obviously, we go through extensive testing and validation to make sure that they're high fidelity, legitimate. We can find that malicious traffic to refine and confirm effectiveness, because our goal is to reduce noise in the environment. And once all that is done, we do push those out in our Dragos knowledge packs, which is our content updating capability in a very regular cadence. So these are essential to keep everyone up to date. It includes protocol dissectors to improve asset inventory, detections, IOCs, and playbooks, all things that we're going to talk about in the demo that Dylan is about to do, where we walk through a scenario of a high fidelity fire, of a detection, and what happens next. So there was a couple of things that I've spoken about that are really key to the rest of this demonstration. I want to make sure that everyone knows what they are in a succinct way. So first is, and they're very key to the Dragos ecosystem to enable coverage while we're, researching some of these emerging threats. We want to keep our customers continuously safe from potential risks in their environment. So Neighborhood Keeper has a lot of different use cases that our customers opt into if they decide to be a part of this collective intelligence network. But in this case, we can query across the fleet to see if anonymized threat detections across the entire community in order to see if there's anything going on that triggers, yes, some high fidelity information. It allows us to really access community-wide data in order to make decisions. It enables the users to receive notifications of emerging vulnerabilities and threats based on those queries that we send out. And it's a way that you can get those knowledge packs pushed into your environment immediately, keeping you up to date. And then on the other side of the coin is our OT Watch service. So this is a continuous threat hunting service. Our team of dedicated Dragos threat hunters, which you're going to hear from Gregory here in a moment, who's a member of the OT Watch team, are actively hunting as this threat intelligence comes out from our teams and those initial early analytics. They can start doing coordinated threat hunting across the fleet to keep organizations safe while we work to build the detections into the Dragos platform. And they do lots of other great stuff. But from a threat detection standpoint, they are the human element of threat detection here at Dragos. So I want really quick to walk through a case study so you can see the Dragos ecosystem from start to finish. So the Frosty Goop malware is a new ICS malware that was discovered by Dragos's threat intelligence team back in April of 2024. And we've been working hard to operationalize the discovery of their activity and the response for our customers within the Dragos platform. So Frosty Goop meets our two key criteria for ICS malware. It has ICS specific knowledge and a clear intent to disrupt or damage in OT environments. And Frosty Goop is the first malware that we've seen using Modbus to directly target ICS devices, posing a serious risk given how widespread this Modbus is in customer environments, the use of Modbus in our customer environment. So we're taking this threat very seriously. And let's talk about how we then started with the detection, or starting with the discovery and moved it all the way into detections in the Dragos platform. And this is the kind of an eye chart of a slide, but it's important to just kind of see from discovery all the way to activation, how Dragos goes forth and builds this information, these detections into the Dragos platform. So it started, as I mentioned, back in April of 2024 with that initial analysis. In May of 2024, we alerted our Worldview subscriber base, which are those that pay for our subscription into our threat intelligence Worldview subscription. Our team is focused on understanding how the Frosty Goop manifests on the network. And on May 22nd, we initially released 8 file indicators for Frosty Goop, which were included in that Worldview report. Throughout that time, our threat intelligence team was querying Neighborhood Keeper. Our industrial threat hunters were able to utilize the data, to perform some distributed threat hunts. So Dragos threat hunters can query those released IOCs and look through for hits across the ecosystem. If hits are found, they're able to send trusted insight reports to all those opted into Neighborhood Keeper as an alert. Hey, there's potentially something going on out there in the wild. You might want to look in and see if your organization is affected. Fast forward one day later, when the CTI team sent out that Worldview report, Dragos released our initial IOCs into the Dragos platform, incorporating these indicators. So this rapid one-day turnaround really demonstrates how quickly we're able to get content from intelligence out into the platform. While all that was happening, our OT Watch team activated off those initial IOCs and started the Frosty Goop hunt into their daily hunt catalog. So OT Watch, they're running currently about 190 plus daily hunts across the OT Watch ecosystem to show, we're able to really. Threat hunting is hard. Threat hunting is a difficult activity to do in-house. Dragos was able to automate a lot of that work and have those humans behind the scenes watching these environments on behalf of our customers. Frosty Goop is one of those 190 daily hunts that are executed. Shortly thereafter, after we went through all the testing, et cetera, we pushed out the composite detection that Dylan is about to show us here in just a moment, to show that compound detection and response with those embedded playbooks. And Neighborhood Keeper is just continuously used. If any activity is found, we're able to send those notifications out to the user base of Neighborhood Keeper, so that organizations are constantly feeling that full loop of Dragos has your back. We're watching this for all of you and giving you the tools that you need to be successful. So with that was a mouthful. Excuse me for that one. I'm going to hand it over to Dylan, who's going to show it in action in the Dragos platform. And then Gregory is going to walk through 2 prescripted threat hunts and how the OT Watch team does that utilizing the Dragos platform. So Dylan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mary. As Mary stated, we have different detection types in the platform. We have modeling, configuration, threat behavior, and indicators. And as you can see, there's multiple different severities in here. Severity 1s and 2s, and sometimes 3s are informational. 3, 4s, and 5s will lead into notifications that should be actioned against or investigated. For example, we have the Frosty Goop behavior alert. That is a Sev 3. We can dive over here and we can see some different asset IPs. One looks like an external, one looks internal. And we can look at the notification record itself to see exactly what happened with these assets. There's timestamps, the detection quadrant. And if we want to action against this notification, there's a couple actions. We can mark it as red to verify that we've gone through this. If this is a false positive, we can create a rule so this no longer fires. Or if we're going to investigate this further, we can create a case. For this example, I'll go through and make a frosty goop alert. We'll give this a higher priority. And frosty goop alert fired can be the hypothesis. So now that we have our case, inside this case, we can go through and add notes in here for investigation purposes of, what have we found? We can see the notification itself that I added before. We can go back and add notification records additionally to this asset. So let's go and add that one to the case, and we can see there is more information now in the records. If we do have files and findings, either we want to upload code snippets or just raw files, we can go through and add in a description and upload a file so that when we need to come back to this case later on, all of our files and code blocks and notification records are all in one place. And Dragos also provides for higher severity alerts playbooks. So for Frosty Goop, we have a malware behaviors playbook. And when we add it to the case, it gives us all the information to go through and help triage that notification. So here it kind of gives some background on it. It gives the worldview and the public resources that Dragos has released. We can go through and see some queries that are in the platform to query against some of the alert types. There is query-focused data sets, which are pre-built queries in the platform that will help you identify different types of traffic already in there. There is steps to go through, and you can say I've completed them or haven't completed them, and just kind of keep record of these tasks. If you get to a point where you think you need additional help, we provide our instant response resources. So there's a link and an email. And lastly, kind of advice is how to go and create a packet capture. So with the Dragos platform, we have people using our sensors to go out and capture off the wire. And here's kind of a pre-built query that could help you go and get that data and then attach it to this case if we see this again. As we go through and are adding information, again, you say this was a false positive, and it'll be in here for record, and then we can go through and add a justification, false alarm, and then once we're done, we can resolve our hunt. So obviously there are steps with the playbook, so we provide insights to the investigation, but with the cases, it provides a one-stop shop of all your information, your notifications, evidence, and then pre-built playbooks to help you identify that information to allow you to resolve your case.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. So as Dylan mentioned, and as Mary mentioned earlier, the OT Watch team is really the action arm of the Dragos ecosystem. We are actioning the threat hunts on behalf of the customer. And some of the new features that Dylan kind of pointed out really empower the OT Watch team to up our threat hunting game within the ICS environment. As mentioned before, the Dragos OT Watch team really coordinates a lot of their efforts with the Dragos Worldview Intelligence team into synthesizing and operationalizing threat hunting within the deployed customer environment using the Dragos platform. So to do this, we first assess and analyze current threat intelligence from a variety of data sources on a daily basis. And we also leverage some partnerships across the industry. This information is then distilled and defined into threat hunt hypotheses that can be proved or disproved through the analysis and testing of threat hunts on a daily basis. In defining these testable hypotheses, we also define the data, including the types of data, the record counts, and the duration required to conduct the tests and analysis of threat hunts. Again, all this is driving towards gaining visibility and situational awareness of the OT network, and it's just the first step. Being able to threat hunt that data effectively at scale, consistent with the evolution of threat hunts or threats and attack surface, is where OT Watch really becomes a difference maker. So in putting all this together, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we derive threat hunt hypotheses, how we derive data required, and the duration of data and visibility of data across the Dragos ecosystem. Next slide, please. So how OT Watch does all of this and how we work. So unlike a traditional SOC that just elevates maybe high severity notification within an IDS system, OT Watch executes persistent fleet-wide threat hunts across the Dragos ecosystem on behalf of the customer. We leverage this key data inputs that you see on the left-hand side, and we build threat hunts derived from those key threat inputs. We start with formulating a threat hunt hypotheses from these strategic inputs, and we build those testable queries within the Dragos platform. The team uses threat intelligence and IOCs codified in the platform, plus additional inputs and expertise to actively search for those potential adversarial activity or data sets. The queries help determine what's genuinely bad versus what might be, say, a misconfiguration within an operational environment, or maybe an unintentional error by an operations engineer or a network engineer. If malicious behavior is found during these threat hunts, OT Watch elevates these findings immediately upon their discovery, and then we assume a supporting role to any activation of incident response or any follow-on investigation deemed necessary by the customer organization. Additionally, OT Watch delivers weekly threat hunt reports, quarterly insights, both of which are published and distributed within the Dragos customer portal. Next, I'd like to talk about a couple of those examples of OT Watch activity that we've had over the last handful of weeks. So the first example was a critical vulnerability that was discovered within Rockwell Automation's control logic and guard logic PLCs. Rockwell put out some valuable information associated with this vulnerability and moved very quickly to patch or rolled back to an unaffected firmware version to this vulnerability. But we had a lot of customers right off the bat ask us, well, how do we know what assets are affected by this vulnerability? So going back to Dylan's use case of the new context building an asset inventory, we in OT Watch quickly put together the actual information, the ground truth of this vulnerability. As you can see there, we analyzed the threat intelligence. We understood that the chassis restriction bypass vulnerability only affected the 1756 series of equipment. And so we were quickly able to operationalize that into a hunting process for affected versions of assets within the Dragos platform environment. So from that, we developed a hypothesis generated a hypothesis built around adversary activity that may leverage this vulnerability. We identified the data requirements associated with an attack that maybe leverage this vulnerability, and then also what that would look like in execution and how that would show up in data fields within the platform environment. Those threat hunt outputs were typically any kind of critical finding escalation associated with that threat hunt. Uh, those got rolled up into weekly hunting reports that went out to the customers. And we also, again, assumed any position to support IR notification or IR kickoff. But we also internally were able to turn around and kind of discern any information associated with that threat hunt and feed that back into our vulnerability management database that our detection engineers work on every day and update through KP releases. Next slide, please, Mary. So what did that look like from the customer side? Well, it was really streamlined for the customer. We, again, push out those weekly reports, but we also push out a platform dashboard and threat summary, and that went directly into customer platforms and is managed by OT Watch. And this dashboard was deployed by the OT Watch team, and it's an example of kind of what Dylan was talking about, a query-focused data set that was rapidly developed to provide, easily displayed results from the analysis. But in addition to just the vulnerability, we also synthesized the threat intelligence summary from the AA and also showcase where those hits from the threat hunt are located within the platform environment. So through the research of malware, or through the research of this vulnerability, OT Watch team was able to, rapidly deploy this within a 48-hour period of time of when the vulnerability was disclosed and published. And again, I use this as an example of what the OT Watch team can do because defense is doable when you can action the intelligence that you have available. So. Next slide. Another great example, and again, Mary and Dylan both talked about this, is the Frosty Goop malware. So in January 2024, the Cybersecurity Situation Center of Ukraine shared some details surrounding a cyber attack that resulted in the disruption of supplied central heating to more than 600 apartment buildings within a population center in Ukraine. So through research of malware samples used during the attack, Dragos was able to discern that the malware and the payload were interacting with Modbus TCP protocol, and that the malware an attacker could issue Modbus read-write commands to the controllers within that attack. So Dragos named that specific malware Frosty Goop, and then went to work with a whole series of platform updates and detections surrounding that attack. Mary made mention to the IOCs that were put out in May and July, and then the OT Watch team went to work threat hunting for that type of activity. So what makes Frosty Goop a specific ICS OT threat? Well, there's some pretty interesting behaviors with this malware and with the adversary. It communicates with specific ICS OT protocols, and it's believed to have been purpose-built to affect an ICS OT environment or control process. These effects cause, very specific disruptive and destructive physical effects that affect health, safety, and environmental conditions. And the way that it accomplishes, both of these things, the capability to read write to ICS/OT environments and to disrupt the process, is really specific adversary tradecraft within the coding behaviors of the malware, right? To interact with with the input and output and configuration data resulting in the improper execution of control logic. So when Dragos received this information from the Dragos intelligence team and the reverse engineers and malware analysts here at Dragos, we went uh, into like threat hunting mode and started developing hypotheses that would prove or disprove this activity across, the Dragos OT Watch customer fleet. So we developed a threat hunt to uncover these specific traits of the malware as it communicates within the control network to ICS assets, specifically keying in on a new network asset or new Modbus connections over port 502, and also coupling that with specific function code commands of code 3, code 6, code 16, as we're seeing in the attack. And so what that allowed us to do was to synthesize those traits of the attack into a scalable solution that's ran daily to identify anomalous network behavior across the entire fleet of OT Watch customers should it occur within a monitored threat environment, monitored by OT Watch. And so really, again, that goes back to we're here for our customers. We're threat hunting daily. We're synthesizing that intelligence and that threat data into actions that are being taken on behalf of the customer. No organization gets to choose if they become a target, which is why we always threat hunt all the time. And defense is doable when you action the intelligence that's available in a quick turnaround. So back to you, Mary.
All right. Thank you, Dylan and Gregory, for walking us through those two great portions of this presentation. It's always great to get a demo and to learn more about how OT Watch does their stuff. So thank you so much. We have covered a ton today, and we have some great questions. So please feel free to keep pushing them in. We are going to have a little bit of time to answer some as we can. But just to wrap us up really quick, a lot of organizations that we speak to are just getting started in their OT cyber journey. So we want to walk through how to really engage with us and how we can help you regardless of where you are in your maturity. So if you're not sure where to start, we highly recommend, we have great resources on the SANS 5 critical controls, which is a framework for cybersecurity in IDS and OT environments. They are based on analysis for known cyber attacks. They're intended to help organizations prevent, detect, and respond to cyber incidents, build those foundational elements. It's a great place to start if you're not sure where your maturity is. So feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to walk you through the SANS ICS 5 critical controls. And if you're looking for some services to assist, right, always starting with an incident response retainer, making sure that you have an IR plan in place should the worst happen that day. We have great supporting services like tabletop exercises, architecture reviews, which Dylan mentioned, just to make sure that you're getting your environment set up for success. If you're wanting to start implementing OT monitoring, or if you need to for a compliance reason, obviously we love the Dragos platform, but implement some sort of OT visibility and monitoring technology with the focus on operationalization. So how is this going to work with your operations? How are you going to make sure that you're considering the constraints in these critical environments and make sure you're building your program, acknowledging those needs and that always on mentality. Great to add a rapid response retainer for IR help. We have proactive services to assist organizations get started. And then OT Watch. A lot of folks think OT Watch is more for the very sophisticated environment, but OT Watch is a great opportunity when you're starting to operationalize your OT cyber journey. And especially there, you see it over on the third step. You want to implement, you're not sure how to start, or you just don't have enough resources. And we are here to support you through that journey with deployment services to streamline rollout. Obviously, Dylan walked through, and I think we have a question in the chat already about what do technical account managers do here at Dragos to help organizations get started. And then OT Watch is outstanding for that OT threat hunting protection. So with that, let's hop over into some Q&A. Again, keep them coming. We'll get through as many as we can. And those that we can't, we'll follow up directly with you after the session. So thank you so much. Let's see what we got. All right. Okay, great. So we've had some really great questions come in the chat. I'm going to rapid fire them and throw them at different people. We'll see how many we can get through. Any that we can't, we will follow up directly. So Greg, we've had a couple threat hunting questions come in. Maybe I'll throw two of them at you at the same time. So the one's pretty tactical. What's the typical turnaround time between threat detection and when you're actually able to hunt? And when is it appropriate to conduct a threat hunt in OT ICS networks? So those are a little unrelated, but I think you can hit both.
Yeah. No, that's great. So the typical turnaround time between threat discovery and when you're able to hunt, I think largely depends on how much information that you have. So if you have a bunch of traits, or it's a documented behavior, something like a lot of ransomware uses SMB1 or something like that, and you're going to threat hunt for that type of activity, or RDP connections into your environment or something like that, something that's well documented. I think the turnaround time is immediate, right? Because you can find the information that's there associated with that behavior. You can rapidly turn that into a threat hunt hypothesis, and then you can go test it. Some threat activity, though, that is not very well documented and is very focused maybe on one specific worldwide region or something like that, it becomes a little bit difficult. You have different levels of interest either in that activity, or you have different levels of reporting associated with that activity. So maybe you have to sit back and wait to be able to develop that hypothesis. So and then when is an appropriate time to conduct threat hunting? Always, every day, all day, every day. I can't state that enough. Again, nobody chooses to become a target, right? So there's not really any advantageous time to threat hunt other than now, right? Because you don't get to choose yourself as the target. The adversary gets to choose you as the target. You kind of always have to be threat hunting. You kind of have to gain that visibility and that situational awareness in your network, and make sure that you continue to do that.
Great. Awesome. Okay, Dylan, this one's for you. Is the now, next, never prioritization approach for vulnerabilities specific to a customer environment, to specific assets? Can you just give us a little more information about that now, next, never prioritization?
Yeah, so that prioritization comes from the Dragos vulnerability management team. It is the same across the board of every environment. So if you have multiple site stores or multiple business units, the vulnerabilities are based on that detection of an asset. There is a confidence rating, so the more information we have on an asset, it will increase the confidence rating. But the now, next, never is universal across the board for those alerts.
Awesome. And Dylan, this is another one for you. It came in right at the beginning. What is a TAM? What is a technical account manager at Dragos? What do you do how do you help our customers? Let me summarize it in a marketing way.
Yeah, the good old what do you do here?
What do you do?
The technical account manager team comes in post sales. So sales, will hand off to field ops to help customers get deployed, and then the technical account managers come in to basically operationalize the platform. So that is education on our product, that is education on the OT technologies that people are finding in their environment. It's really trying to prevent shelfware and really encourage people to build healthy environments for their businesses and really engage with OT security. Every single customer is at their own place in their OT journey, and we're pretty adaptable and can help anyone from the smallest power companies to very mature Fortune 500s. So, early there to engage with the customers and educate, teaching them to fish.
Yeah, it's one thing to buy a piece of technology and another thing to be able to utilize it. So yes, the TAM organization is very loved by the Dragos customers. Okay, we have a ton of questions about threat hunting. But I think we're going to be coming up to time here. So Greg, I'm going to throw one at you. You mentioned 180 daily hunts. Can you give me the most recent number? Because I think I flubbed that one to how many are we doing today? And the question is, what are some of the most common threat hunts conducted by OT Watch, right? You're doing all those daily hunts. What are you conducting most frequently?
Yeah, you were pretty spot on with the number. Right now, we're somewhere we're hovering somewhere right around 170 to 180 threat hunts per day. And those really run the gamut of sophistication or simple access. Um, some of the most common threat hunts that we conduct utilize behaviors that are basically cross-boundary behaviors. So insecure protocols, the hypothesis that are generating these threat hunts are that an adversary is using, maybe clear text credentials to gain foothold within the network or to do something, and so we'll look for that. Or maybe the adversary is using an insecure protocol by design, something that doesn't have any security features like SMB version 1 or Telnet, or even like FTP or TFTP protocol or something like that. And then going the other way, I mean, we threat hunt for some really specific, sophisticated behavior like living off the land techniques that are really, really difficult to detect with any IDS or automated detection, where you have to really churn through the data and look at that behavior over a period of time to actually warrant a threat hunt, or to warrant an escalation in investigation. So.
All right, thanks, Gregory. All right, we are getting here close, but let's see if we can get this last one in. Dylan, as a technical account manager, what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys, your team deals with when organizations are starting to roll out a technology like this?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Some of the biggest challenges for customers are they don't know what they truly have for the first time. So being conscious of that during the deployment phase of not only north-south, but getting that east-west traffic really opens up the insights of the platform and allows customers to really see what they truly have in the environment. And once they have that information, they start to open those conversations up with the industrial engineers of their company, their electrical teams, their maintenance teams, and really get everyone involved kind of in this process. And once we see those operational users in the OT environments using the platform, we see the fidelity increase so much faster than siloed cyber teams. So I'd say definitely getting that east-west traffic. If you need support going through and doing an architecture review through some of our Dragos services, and that'll definitely help you get prepared for sensor deployment.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. All right, I think we're at time here, and we have a couple more great questions around knowledge packs, neighborhood keeper. We covered a lot today, so please, if you would like to get a demo, dig into anything more specifically, please reach out. We do have questions here that we will follow up with you one-to-one directly. The recording should come out here in the next day or so, and we really appreciate you joining us here today. And thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.